you can continue to ask me questions. That's a-okay. All right, hello TikTok. I'll give you a moment to, get here, and we can talk about all these amazing sea stars and other intertidal sea life that we are seeing down here at the beach. I'm here with my friend Chris. He's a fellow naturalist, and we're just checking out what we can see here. If you want to post in the comments where you're watching from, I'd love to know that information. And you can ask questions along the way, but I cannot guarantee that I will be able to answer them because I gotta walk and talk and not step on sea creatures all at the same time. That's quite difficult. So right here we're looking at a fairly typical January low tide scene. The water is really clear and visibility is very good because the sun sets at like 4 p.m. We get very little daylight this time of year, and that means the plankton dies off and kind of clarifies the water. So we're looking at, this is, several modeled sea stars. They come in lots of different colors, kind of teal and beige and orange and blue, kind of bluish orange. And then there's also a little red rock crab juvenile here. Actually just kidding, it's a graceful crab juvenile, very similar species. Metacarcinus gracilis, I think is their name. There's also, I don't know if you can see, some shrimp. There's a little green shrimp kind of right down in there. And then some hermit crabs and some also zoomy shrimp. These are Sitka shrimp, a species that takes on whatever coloration of the food that it's eating. So these guys have been eating green algae, sea lettuce, ulva, and so they're green. Oh, look at that one. Wow. The colors on this one. Yeah, tons of shrimp. So the shrimp end up feeding everything else. So all the fish that are out here, they're going to be feasting upon this species. They're a really good food source for tons and tons of things, especially the small juvenile fish like this chum salmon, which will be hatching soon. And as they make their way out into the saltwater, the estuary, the bay here, this is one of their first foods in the saltwater. Super cool. Yes, we are out of the Purdy Sand Spit. You can hear the cars behind me. It's a nice calm-ish night. You can kind of see into the distance there. No big white caps. It is raining though, but not enough to even notice. Thanks.
Rougher on the lagoon side than the...
Yeah, but wind must be blowing from the other side. Oh yes, this is a pinecone fish. Yeah. Okay, tell us about this. What do we got? What kind of species?
Not one of our two native species.
No, I was gonna say it looks like an ornamental one. I know. I'm guilty of calling pine cones anything a pine cone when half the time they're fir cones. There's plenty of fir cones around here too. Oh yeah, fir. Douglas fir.
Tree debris everywhere.
Tree debris. Yeah, it drives me crazy when I'm at the beach and there's all kinds of tree debris. All right, well, let's walk along and see what else we can find. If you're new to our page, welcome. This is what we do. We create these learning opportunities based around the sound, and our goal is to inspire stewardship of this place by telling you interesting and cool facts about it, with the goal that you will then care about it and want to protect it and, just maybe come visit if you're from far away. If you want to post in the comments where you're watching from, I'd love to know that information. Harbor Wildwatch is a nonprofit organization. We rely on grants and donations to keep our programs free for everyone. And so any gifts that you give us through TikTok will help to fund those programs. Check out this beautiful red algae, this red seaweed. This is called Turkish towel. And it is one of my most favorite species because it has just the most fantastic texture. It's really, really bumpy. Right now is a great time to look at it because it's got this kind of blue iridescent sheen to it, and that is kind of a protection against the sun as this newly emerging frond needs to be protected. Even though we don't have very strong sun at this time of year, they still need their UV protection. Here's a little anemone, a very little anemone. This is a plumose anemone. They get much larger than this. There's another one over here. Yeah, it totally does look like it's head banging. That's a good observation. We're gonna see lots of these tonight. These are heart cockles. Look at that beautiful heart-shaped shell. Easy one to remember. Oh yeah, here we got more fir cones. Douglas fir with the little mouse tails. Alright. Oh, we got a red rock crab. Just the carapace though. Nobody home here. Although this is not a molt, it is an animal that died. This one has a free-living scale worm on it. It's a free-living scale worm. Other scale worm species have a symbiotic relationship with sea stars, so we can show you when we find another mottled star. We can check for one of those. And then there's tons of little hermit crabs. Just about all these snail shells down here. Oh, I probably should not float that away. Send them on a voyage. Farewell. Who knows where you're gonna end up, little friend. We like to encourage you to leave sea creatures as you find them on the beach. Do not be moving them around. That's pretty poor form. Definitely not leave no trace principles, right? Oh, a bit of trash. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's a sea star hanging out in there. Little tiny baby mottled sea star. Fantastic.
Right in a. Oh, I don't know what
maybe
that
a
is.
limpet or
I thought it was a shotgun case, but I don't think so.
maybe a piece of fireworks. That's a really common piece of trash here. This whole spit on the 4th of July will be just lined with cars. People who get here super early. Another anemone. Yesterday was National Spaghetti Day, so it's worth mentioning that this is a seaweed called red spaghetti. There's more of it. It really does look like spaghetti. You can just toss some marinara on that and meat sauce and go to town. Oh, check this out. Okay, this is super cool. This wood here has been drifting a while and has been invaded by a marine mollusk called a shipworm or teredo worm. And you can kind of tell there's like the shell casing on the inside of these worm tubes. And this is a species that has taken out more ships than any other. We got an ochre sea star hidden in there, another mottled baby sea star, and there's a little kind of crab tucked inside here. Somebody told me this, and I don't know if it's true. I never can remember to Google it. One of you can go look it up for me. But that of the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, Columbus's 3 famous ships, 2 of them succumbed to teredo worms, and that was their end. It's why boats were covered with like tar and other anti-fouling chemicals to try to prevent this from happening. And even though the name is teredo worm, it's not a worm, it's a mollusk. It's a clam, a bivalve. Oh, check it out. There's a baby sand dollar right here. Little teeny tiny baby sand dollar. Yeah, a lot of people do like to use the teredo wood as lumber. I've seen some people fill it in with like a glow-in-the-dark epoxy, and then they polish it smooth, and it looks really cool. But yeah, we're just at the point of the low tide right about now. So, there's the symbiotic scale worm and this beautiful star. So if you're really gentle and the sea star's not attached, you can lift them up. It won't harm them. If your hands are moist and cool and you're gentle and not ripping off their tube feet, you can investigate them and sort of check them out. Just be advised, they will suction cup to you if you hold still long enough. Which can be a little unnerving when all of a sudden you're sucked on by a creature. Ooh, there's a big clam in there. Probably a horse clam by the size of it. Here's a horse clam shell, just to give you some scale of the size that these animals can be. Usually a good spot for stuff to hide. Lots of little tiny snails inside this, but this is a horse clam. There are tons of horse clam siphons here. It's one of the reasons, I mean, it's raining, so I wear waterproof pants, but it's one of the reasons I wear these even when it's not raining, is because I'll often get sprayed by those as you're walking along. Here is a beautiful big moon snail shell. This one did not get killed, so probably died of perhaps old age. This is about the right size of their maximum. And I can tell that because this front edge of the shell is intact. So when that gets damaged, it's usually a sign that red rock crabs have been preying on them. But this one is whole, and of course has become habitat for all the other things living on it. Ooh, oysters! This is not a native oyster. This is an invasive species that was brought in from Japan because we ate all of our oysters here. The Olympia oyster population went drastically down in part because of the gold rush and people wanting to harvest those and, you know, splurging and spending their money on the delicacy that is Olympia oysters. And so they were over harvested and their population plummeted. So the state said, well, let's bring in oysters because these are edible too. And you know what? They're from a more tropical climate. They won't be able to reproduce here because our winter weather temperature is too cold for them, except for when we have some climate change and some warm weather. And they were able to survive. And that one right there is probably not a spontaneous one. It's probably one that that escaped from captivity from people farming them and is loose because it was loose. But when you find them attached to a rock, oysters can't attach themselves when they're outside of their larval phase. So if you find one attached to the rock, it's a larval oyster that survived. And about 4 years ago, we had a really big, massive spawning event where so many of them survived. Another beautiful mottled sea star. So I like extra tufts for my beach adventures because they're pretty soft-soled. The other great thing is like muck boots or insulated boots. In the summertime, Crocs are great. People will complain about Crocs all the time, but they are the best water shoes. They're also really good is like Keen type sandals. I need something that protects my toes because barnacles like to reach out and just cut you. Okay, not really, but it's really easy to stub your toe on barnacles or other sharp things at the beach, so I recommend some sort of sandal with closed toe. But I generally just wear my extra tufts all the time, unless it's really, really warm and I need to cool off. So here's a red rock crab fatality here. This moon snail was definitely eaten. It could have been eaten by a gull, but this is pretty big for a seagull to be able to lift up. And this broken shell means somebody ate it. But we saw at least one live moon snail, and we'll probably see a few more. Tide's not super low tonight, so I wouldn't expect that we would find a ton, but one or two. Usually where you start seeing the or the starfish, the sea stars on the beach, you'll be in the right zone for moon snails. You can post in the comments if you've ever seen a moon snail before. They're very cool creatures and one of our most popular on our videos. I think I have a whole playlist devoted to moon snails. Let's see, what else is there to see? Thank you to all of you who have liked and shared and commented. That does help push this out to even more people. Oh, check out this beautiful sea star here. Look at the color of this. This is a mottled sea star, again, the same Evisterius trochelii that we were seeing before in blue and green and beige, but this one is just exquisitely orange. I always say that this is like the redhead version. It's the like recessive, more rare coloration than the rest, and it's awesome. So pretty. And for scale, that's how big we're talking. So not huge. This is maybe a couple years old. Sea stars' growth is determined by how much food they have, so they don't grow at a prescribed rate. They could have really abundant food and grow really fast and be really big, or they could have barely anything and grow very, very slowly. It's another. So this is the same species, just different colors.
They always have this banding?
No, not always. Just, yeah, give it a flip and see. Those little 2 feet will come on out. So sea stars don't have any blood. They use seawater as their blood, which is why there are no lake sea stars, because they need that salt within their tissues to carry out their bodily functions. They have a hydrostatic or a water vascular system, so they pressurize water within their tissues to extend their tube feet. And oh, here's a different one. This one's totally moving. This is a spiny pink star. The Patrick Sea Star, as so many people like to call them. And this one's moving, yeah. They can't really move too much when they're out of the water because they're using water to power their body systems. It's why we can keep sea stars in our touch tanks at the Harbor Wild Watch office, and they don't just crawl right out. So an octopus can definitely create suction and move itself and propel itself forward and up and out of an open tank, but sea stars cannot. They can't leave the water. But when the water leaves them during low tide, they can be without of the water for several hours at a time. I think there was an experiment done, and 18 hours was the longest that certain species could survive out of water. So they're perfectly adapted to the tide leaving them twice a day, every day. It's not always negative like this, so some days they're not exposed, but when we have spring tides where the sun and the moon are pulling in the same alignment, so on a new moon or a full moon, that's when we have the greatest tidal fluctuations, and so these creatures get exposed. Thank you for the gifts, everyone. You are so lovely, Doug. Appreciate you. So a lot of people will say, well, how come you don't say starfish? Isn't that what you mean? Isn't that a starfish? And yes, you're totally right, and I 100% know what you mean. I used to get really annoyed when people said starfish because it's not a fish. It's not anything close to a fish. Fish is incredibly different. But, you know, that's the beauty about language is words change, and if you were understood, that should be good enough. So I don't get mad at people saying starfish any longer.
Also, it's not a star.
Also, it's not a star. Yeah. Oh, here's a beautiful. This is one of the only species of hermits that can occupy moon snail shells. They get really big. I believe this is a black-eyed hermit crab. Come on out, my friend. I want to show you off. He says, nope, I'm shy. So hermit crabs are not true crabs. They have one less pair of walking legs. They are a crab imposter, and you can tell by counting their limbs and by their long antenna. So true crab has short antenna and kind of a more squat, flattened body shape. But this is a great example of carcinization, or the tendency that crustaceans have to take on crab forms. And of course, you're going to be so shy. Come on. Come on. Yeah, there you go. Come be TikTok famous. Don't worry that it's bright light in the middle of the night. Don't worry about it. We are friends. So you can see how the two pinchers are different sizes. That is an adaptation that helps them to block that shell opening, so that larger pincher will act kind of like a trap door. And then they have really long antennae that'll reach out and sweep backwards so they can feel things that are approaching from the back of their shell. And then their abdomen is soft and squishy. Look at him. Oh my gosh, you're so cute. He just sees those. He brings his little bright eyeballs out. Oh my gosh, you're a darling. Come on out. Come on, say something encouraging, TikTok, so that we can get him out here. There we go. Oh, scared him. I say him because I have stupid rules for what gender things are. So crabs are hims unless I know if it's a she. Nudibranchs are she's unless I know it's a he. Anemones are its. I don't really give them a sex, even though they do have them. Yeah. There's a big ring in the sand. Where? We'll leave this little friend. Carry on. I don't really want to see you walk around because you're so adorable. This is one of my favorite species. So his shell was broken by a crab, probably a red rock crab, and ate the moon snail inside. These hermit crabs don't make their shells. They have to take them from either another crab that's already occupying it, and they will get quite crabby and just like evict them forcibly from their homes, or they will sometimes do these beautiful organized little swaps. Had the potential to be really cool. So as the crabs grow, their shells don't grow with them because they're no longer a part of a living organism, and so the hermit crabs have to find bigger shells. It's one of the reasons why we recommend that you don't take shells from the beach, especially snail shells. Take a photo and put that on your mantle instead. This is another mottled star, but this one's got a little something extra. There's an extra limb here. Typically they would have 5 rays, pentaradial symmetry, but every once in a while that gets a little messed up. Ooh, that's a bacterial bloom from something probably died there and got devoured there. Ooh, here's a big bird footprint. Did you see it? And Big walked along here. I'm guessing a great blue heron, because that's the only thing that's got feet that size. The great blue herons love to terrorize me at night because you can't see them, you just hear them, and they sound like what I imagine a pterodactyl would sound like. Just this very prehistoric call. Alright, I'm surprised we haven't found any moon snails, but to be fair, I haven't really been investigating oh, here's a live cockle. So this is the clam. And right there, so that tiny little opening is where the clam would stick out its siphon. Clams are filter feeders, so they're pulling water in to their body system and filtering out what they can from inside, and then they'll squirt out whatever's not edible or whatever is been digested. Oh yeah, so okay, here we go. This is a horse clam. This one's got a lot of things living on it. There's an anemone there. So right there and right there are the 2 holes. This is very dangerous for me to stick my finger right above this animal because they squirt. And so water is going to go in through one of those holes and out through the other. And if I touch it, it will probably... Oh, he's like, no, don't make me go down. All right, good day. Goodbye. Love it. Horse clams are like the only animal I poke. I also generally don't advocate poking animals, but horse clams are incredibly tough and they can absolutely take that. Everything else you should gently pet. I usually recommend to kids to touch animals like you would touch your own eyelid. If you poke it or push it or pry it or try to pick at it, it's gonna hurt. But if you're slow and careful and give it a pet, it won't hurt at all. And generally we recommend cold, wet fingers are best because these are cold, wet animals. That's what they're adapted to. You don't want to leave them extra dry or extra warm by holding on to them for too long or anything like that. Oh, got a white fly. Little trash cleanup. Always a good idea when we come to the beach. Leave it cleaner than we found it. Ooh, there was a clam siphon just popped up there. Trying to get me soaked. Here's another. Oh, Mr. Hermit Crab, I think you are a little ambitious in your shell choice. So it's actually not terribly cold tonight. It's what, probably 40, 45 degrees Fahrenheit. You can post in the comments what the temperature and what the weather's like where you are. It's always fascinating for me to know that. It's raining. It's pretty typical for January. From now till about April, it's just going to rain all the time. That's not true, obviously, but we kind of have this reputation for having very, very rainy weather here in the Seattle area. We're about an hour south of Seattle. To kind of give you some perspective, this body of water that we're looking at is called Henderson Bay, and it's connected to Puget Sound and the Greater Salish Sea. So you technically could like get in a kayak and go to Canada from here. Actually, you could go anywhere. Ooh, is that a live cockle? Looks like it. Are you alive, cockle? Yeah, I think so. No, you're dead. Let's see. Anybody? Not even anybody sheltering in there except for one little shrimp. The shrimp's eyes kind of glow at night, so they're a little easier to spot. They're kind of everywhere. My brain tends to tune them out. Oh, here's a moon snail. And you don't... Oh, here's a moon snail. And you don't believe me, do you? But I'm gonna dig it out for you. Because I haven't dug out any. So I can tell that it's moon snail off the bat because the sand is kind of mounded up. So you can see it's kind of up. And then right here, there's this little divot down into the sand. That is the moon snail's kind of their siphon that allows water to get down to their gills when they're under the sand. And also there's a really big track leading right up to this mound, so that's another good indicator. And usually if you look close back here, you can see a little bit of mucus that they leave behind. So I'm gonna hand this to you, Chris. You can aim it at that.
Back.
Yes, sorry. No, excavate.
Cute little mollusk that's about to come out of the sand.
Little, yeah, real little. Kind of a medium size, and I can tell that it's getting a little more mature because there's barnacles living on the top surface. So those barnacles can only land when the snail is out of the sand, meaning they're big enough, they feel comfortable enough to just kind of cruise without going fully underneath. Our tide's coming in. So I'm just gonna lift on the snail, have a little rinse, and fully see this crazy huge big animal. So that's a moon snail. This part right here is the whorl of their shell. It sometimes gets called the eye, although they can't see out of it. They don't have eyes. It would be pretty hard to see when you travel underground, so they're kind of fairly blind. They do have two antennae that will kind of stick up here and here when the animal's comfortable, and it's really hardly moving at all. It's cold. So moon snails, this is their foot. They have this mucus that they secrete. It helps cut through the friction of the sand. Being soft like this, they're basically constantly getting exfoliated as they plow through. So they secrete a lot of mucus.
Because they travel under the sand.
Yeah, under the sand, except for this little section that comes out when they're big enough. So smaller moon snails will be under all the time. Bigger moon snails get kind of complacent and they don't fully bury. But they feel like if raw chicken breast could move, is the best description that I've come up with to explain it. It really does feel like chicken breast. It's about the same temperature. The water temperature in the winter is about 45 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's right about where your fridge is. This is very much like raw chicken breast. This is the front part of their muscular foot, and they will kind of dig down with that. There is also proboscis, which is their at the end is their mouth, which is got this tongue like a radula. I'm just gonna see if there's a shell nearby. I'll find one. That's been eaten by a moon snail. We passed like 1,000 earlier. Okay, fine. You gotta take my word for it. But they drill holes through clams. And when I say drill, it's not like a twisting motion. They just have a round radula. It's like a chainsaw tongue that scrapes and scrapes down near the hinge muscle of the clam. And that will kill the clam and open it up. And then they eat from inside the shell. And one report I read said it takes about 4 days for them to eat a clam and move on to the next one. which is cool. So we're gonna place this animal right back where it was.
And believe it or not, they can get all that body inside the shell.
Yeah, that's what's wild. Okay, so I can kind of show you carefully and gently. Right back here, that kind of brown, blackish plate back there is called the operculum, and it is the trap door that they use to seal themselves within that shell. So if he felt threatened, that it would go fully inside. So just help him out, give him a little berry, and he'll be back down in a matter of minutes. Oh, berry, there goes water. Wow. So now you've all seen a moon snail. Okay. If you come to this beach on about a negative 1.5 foot tide, or lower, you'll find moon snail. There's plenty of clams here. Where there's clams, there's moon snails. Okay. Back. All right, let's see what else we can find. Should we walk all the way to the sand dollars? I think we like halfway. It's hard to like get your bearings on this section of beach when you're all the way out here. So the tide is coming back in now, which means pretty soon all of this will be underwater and we'll be kind of pushed off of the beach. But if you're not already following us, make sure you are, because we do these live streams generally with every low tide if the weather is not completely terrible. It's pretty windy today. Oh, look at these stars. Wow, so blue. They're just so gorgeous. For whatever reason, this beach has very blue sea stars. It'd be an interesting thing to study why that is. Maybe there's just some really prolific blue sea stars out here, and they make lots of larvae that settle here. Yeah, I'm doing my best to block the wind, but I apologize. There's not much I can do about that. People always ask me, what superpower would you have? It's always a great conversation starter. And I always say I want to control the tides so that wherever I go, it can be low tide. I can just walk right out in the seasonal part. I can see all the sea life without having to get totally wet. Also sorry for the erratic filming that is happening right now. I'm looking for interesting things to show you, which means I have to swivel my head around and also watch where I step so we don't crush any creatures. Okay, there's a moon snail mark. Not a very good one, but they have a little round hole in the clamshells. So when you find a perfectly round countersunk hole, that's moon snail munch. Yeah, they're pretty efficient predators. And clams is their most favorite thing. I'll walk up and just check out the rocky habitat for a second. Oh, here's a big dead crab. I don't know why I said that so enthusiastically. You can tell it's dead because it's in pieces, but also because there are snails all around it. Dove snails are a great scavenging species that clean up all the edible material in the crab. So right here you can kind of see off to my right, it's mostly all rocks and barnacles. And then off to the left, it's all sand. And very different species will live just a few feet away from one another, and if they're transported to the opposite side, they just don't survive. Creatures are very particular about where they can thrive, and most of these animals are larval, and they come in as tiny plankton and settle if the habitat is suitable. Here's another kind of a pale orange. come volunteer with us or come attend one of our local programs if you're native. This is a jackknife. So we have razor clams out on the coast. This is like our Salish sea cousin to the razor clam, called the jackknife clam. Oh, there's a cool molt. So this is a green shore crab, and I know that it's a molt because it opens back. So dead crabs don't open like that, but molts do. Here's a live shore crab. Oh yeah, look, there's a bunch of them. A bunch of these stars in here. Look, here's another one. Look how well this one blends in. Hardly see it. All right, maybe we shouldn't walk on these rocks. Don't want to crush all these little creatures. So this is a green shore crab, although they are not always green. Especially in their juvenile phase, they tend to have really mottled coloration. Yeah, like this. So this one is a barnacle impersonator. See, this one is trying to be.
You got one white leg? No, that's just the way the light is.
No, yeah, it's just the light. But they do come in really fantastic colors. Somewhere I have a photo of one that had a smiley face on his back. It was very cool. But yeah, green shore crabs, Hemigrapsis oregonensis, Oregon shore crabs. They got lots of common names. But they love living here. Oh, there's another baby sea star. I'm gonna check the pottery. This one, look at that scale worm there. So the scale worm has a symbiotic relationship with the sea star. It lives on and underneath it and just preys upon whatever the sea star is eating. Oh, look, and here's a free living one. There is a free living scale worm. You can see those kind of scales along their back. They can be free living or they can be symbiotic. This is was once thought to be just a commensal relationship where only one species had the benefit, being the scale worm got a place to live and protection from predators. But then we looked a little closer and realized that they help defend their host from other predators. What are you finding? Oh, look at all those. Wow, look at the size of that one. That's a big scale worm. Yeah. So big scale worms. And there's a flatworm there too. So totally different worm categories. Okay, let's see if I can get it to focus. So the big flat slimy thing that's moving is a flatworm, a Platyhelminthes phylum, and then the scale worms are polychaetes in the annelid phylum. And then we've got mottled stars, which are echinoderms, and crabs, which are arthropods. We got a lot of diversity of phyla here. More mollusks. That's what. Ooh, look at this. Ooh, I like when you say that. Oh yes. Speaking of mollusks, this is a woody chitin. Here, we don't have to bend so far over. We can actually see. This is a woody chitin. Chitins are like a snail, but instead of a spiraled shell, they have these 8 plates along their back, and they are one of the most ancient of organisms. They have been around since before the time of the dinosaurs. They've survived so many mass extinctions, and there's more species alive today than we have found in the fossil record. So they are thriving in their simplicity. They basically just hang out on a rock. They will...
what do they eat?
They eat algae, so they'll scrape algae off the rock. And this one's probably feeding on this Mastocarpus tar spot algae. Could be Hildebrandia, but it's a red algae that encrusts, and that's what they're eating. Yes, you can pet it. I can pet it.
Very hard.
Yeah, they're really, really tough organisms. They're very difficult to get off of their rock, unless it's really hot out, and then sometimes they just kind of lose their grip as they heat up, get heat stressed. Yeah, really cool. Primitive, but no less successful animal. I really like chitins. We have really huge gumboot chitins in rocky intertidal habitats. I've done some videos on those. I have a whole mollusk playlist if you're interested. You can check that out. I've got lots of playlists. I probably have too many. I'm sure I'm breaking some sort of... Oh, see, these are oysters that have naturalized. These are Japanese oysters. that spawned and landed on this rock, even though they're not supposed to. It's too cold here for them to survive that and to naturalize, except for that they did. So if you want to know more about tide pooling, I would recommend following us on all of our social media platforms. We've got a YouTube channel. You can watch our videos of past low tide beach walks. We've got lots of different locations where we show people how to walk a beach. If you're local to our area, come to a beach walk with us. We do guided beach walks, not so much at night because it's really hard to get access to a lot of parks. That's why we're here at the Purdy Sand Spit. It's technically a county park, but it's just basically right alongside of the freeway, so there's no gate to keep people out. And so we have access to it, but most of the state parks and other parks, you can't just go out at night. Oh, that's a slipper snail. Yeah. So they have their bottom shell looks like a slipper. You could just stick your foot in where their body cavity is.
Were they always attached to rocks?
Generally, yeah. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen one alive and not attached. And when they find other slipper snails, they'll just like stack together so that they can just mate anytime they want. So you'll sometimes see like a stack of like 7 of them. They're just all piled up, and you're like, oh, okay, hey guys. Getting real friendly. Look at all the shrimp. So that water movement is all from little Sitka shrimp in the water there. That's a pretty big rock, although we probably could turn it and see everything underneath it. Putting it back where it goes is going to be problematic. So I generally recommend we only lift rocks instead of just turning them. You can really flip over a large rock with your leverage, but placing it back is often what damages animals. Oh, somebody's dry bag got wet. Oh, yeah. All right. We've been seeing some interesting things wash up. We had just incredibly high tides a couple weeks ago that were already a king tide and very high, and then because we had very low atmospheric pressure, the high tide was even higher by about 2.4 feet, and so we had really strong flooding. All right, so we're starting to get into sand dollar territory because I'm noticing the dead sand dollar tests washing up.
Oh, here too.
Yeah, it is a little bit more kind of funky, more low tidey. And so this is all going to be sand dollars. And sand dollars, might be another moon snail too. But sand dollars are echinoderms. They're related to sea urchins, sea cucumbers, and sea stars. And they're basically like a flat urchin. And so here's a freshly dead one. And they're really, really delicate. So you can see the mouth when they're dead. A living sand dollar will never show you their mouth. But this is just like a potato chip. They're so delicate. But then when we get to see the live ones, there are so many of them. Oh, here we go. They're just everywhere. So the first thing that you'll see is just little black chunks, and that is the living edge of the sand dollar. So sand dollars have small spines along their body, and so they sparkle when they move, and you have bright lights on them or sunlight on them. These aren't moving too much because it's pretty chilly out. In the warmer weather, they really will wiggle quite a bit. So right here is the mouth in the center, and like I said, the living ones do not show you their mouth. And then on the back edge, where you can see this kind of sea star pattern, by the shortest limbs, that is where their anus is. So, and that's usually the side that's up. Almost always, that's the side that's up, because they will go to the bathroom on the outgoing tide, and so oftentimes their rear end is up so that everybody poops as the tide goes out, and then everybody eats as the tide comes in, so nobody's eating while their neighbor's pooping. It's a very sophisticated system for animals without a brain. But yeah, look at all these dead ones. This is not uncommon. I'm not alarmed by seeing so many dead ones. This is pretty typical. But this freshly dead one, we can see a lot of the details of their body. So you can see that star pattern, that vestigial hint that they are related to sea stars. The mouth at the center, and then right around the edge is their anus right there. And they're everywhere. When they're freshly dead, they're white like this, and then they get algae and bacteria that grows on them that kind of discolors them. Sometimes they get really, really dark like this. And when you smash them open, that was kind of a drastic smash. I was going to show, oh, this one had some worms living inside. All right, sorry worms, I did not mean to destroy your home. There's a polychaete worm there. There's another species of polychaete. But they have these little mouth parts that we always called them the birds or the angels. Yeah, here we go. Here's more doves. Those little pieces. If you're curious how they are like arranged within, you can just Google sand dollar X-ray, and you can see how they are arranged. But there's 5 of them because they have, again, pentaradial symmetry. So everything's in kind of 5 parts, just like a starfish, sea star. So yeah, that's some sand dollars. And where you start to see them alive, they're everywhere. And this beach in particular, they're just doing incredibly well. Absolutely thriving here. And I mean, they're everywhere. So you could dig down. They go down about sometimes as far as 2 feet. And so you might, in a square meter, come across, 500. They're really, really densely packed. But they're very, very cool species. All right. Let's go back down by the low tide and see if there's anything cool to look at down there. But yes, if you would like to come to the beach, Harbor Wild Watch does do low tide beach walks. They're free, they're open to the public, and they're happening at most of our local beaches. And so we'll bring you out to this location and many others and show you how to find those animals on your own, teach you about them, and give you some tips on how to conserve this beautiful habitat and make sure that it's gonna be here for generations to come. Because even if you don't live right on the water, you still have an important role to play in preserving and being a steward of this place. Check out this beautiful blue mottled sea star. I am holding my phone. It's in my hand. That's because I move my head like this, and you do not want to be attached to my head. That would be a very terrible experience. So apologies. The wind is picking up. It's definitely much windier than it was when we started, but the rain has stopped, so that's a plus. So we're into some eelgrass habitat here. That's what the green is. This is Japanese eelgrass, another introduced species, Zostera japonica, and it is changing the topography of this beach a little bit. You can see it. Oh, I don't know if you can see. It is raised up a little bit where the eelgrass is. It prevents erosion and holds on to a lot of the sand, so it kind of shifts how this beach changes season to season. A little bit deeper water is our native eelgrass, and there's a lot of it here. This big shallow bay is perfect habitat for that eelgrass, and it is an incredibly important habitat for so many different animals.
Was I reading that Japanese eelgrass seems to serve the same basic functions as the native one?
Yeah, we're trying to decide whether we're mad at the Japanese eelgrass for being here or not. It warrants further study. It does seem to outcompete it in certain cases. So where Japanese eelgrass infiltrates native eelgrass, the native eelgrass dies back. So it's like, oh, that's maybe not so good. But it does do photosynthesis. It does provide habitat and is important. I would rather see non-native eelgrass than nothing. So eelgrass is still good, even if it's the bad kind. Yeah, it's about the only one we have here. There is some surf grass that is found in other rocky intertidal pieces, but yeah, not many plants can handle full strength salt water. body tissues. Are you a living cockle? I think you are, but I've been fooled twice tonight. Oh, you're not alive. If you can open it, it's not alive. This is Purdy Spit in Gig Harbor. It's a great beach to come on a low tide. Just make sure that you bring a trash bag with you, because it is a sand spit. It kind of is this natural place where stuff tends to drift in. Oh, we've got a hermit crab little powwow happening. Either a shell swap or potentially a mating interaction. So these are bearing hermits. I think it's hard to tell. With hermit crabs, you gotta look at like what color are their antennas and what color are their pinchers and what color are the junctures between their leg joints. But I'm pretty sure that's a bearing. It's either a bearing or a grainy hand hermit crab. But what was I saying? Oh yes, so the Purdy sand spit, because it sticks out, it's this kind of sand spit peninsula, and the way the currents and the tides kind of push the waves up, it tends to collect a lot of trash. So it's a great one if you want to build up your karma for the day. Come out and pick up a bag of trash. It doesn't take long at all. There's so much here. And the longer the trash stays here, the more incorporated into the environment it gets. Everything becomes habitat eventually here. So when we have plastics and metal and glass, it all just gets colonized by animals. Alright, let's go check out the rocks a little bit. Chris hasn't ever seen a nudibranch, so let's see if we can show him one. And there should be some barnacle eating nudies here. On these rocks that are covered with barnacles. So this is a pretty decent sized rock. I think we can turn it safely. So when I'm looking for nudies, I flip the rock and I look at the rock. When I'm looking for other stuff, I will flip the rock and look at what's underneath it. This is mostly flatworms. You can see those kind of slimy bits on their rocks there are flatworms. Flatworms and nudies kind of don't really overlap too much. There is a couple crabs down here in this. Ooh, it's a black-clawed mud crab. It is. So, I'll just stand up so I can block the wind a little bit better. This is a black-clawed mud crab, Lopopanopolis bellis. It looks like a shore crab, but it's got black-tipped pinchers, and it goes into this very rigor mortis type pose. They either will ball up like this, or they will put their pinchers straight out to the sides in a very defensive posture. This one's a female, and I can tell that by this tail flap. So if you picture a lobster and the tail that they have that sticks out behind them, and then you shrink it and fold it up on the underside, that's what this is basically. And females are going to have a wide flap that can carry lots of eggs, and the female's flap usually touches their legs on either side to kind of maximize that space. A male crab, let's see if there is a male under here. No, just a molt there. Male crabs are going to have a pointed abdomen. That is much smaller, more narrow. It doesn't touch the legs on either side. Find another decent sized rock to turn over. Black-clawed mud crabs are kind of the lower portion of the crabs, and then you'll get into the green shore crabs, and then you'll get all the way up to the purple shore crabs up at the very top where the ground is not wet beneath their rocks. So they each kind of have their own separate sections. Alright, so let me wait for it. Oh, there's a brittle star. Okay, this is a very, very cool species of sea star. This is a brittle star, class Ophiuroidea, and they have a pretty different body arrangement than your typical sea star. They are very flexible in their limbs. They can move very fast compared to sea stars, which are pretty clunky and slow moving. They are also very brittle. They don't really enjoy being handled. I grabbed this one while it was still underwater. If it were dry and I tried to pick it up, it would just break its little limbs right off. They're so, so delicate. But I have about 15 years experience doing this, and so this is a species I recommend just looking at, but because I'm going to just show you.
They get much larger than that.
Yeah. Here, though, in the Salish Sea, they're pretty small. Dime-sized central body. biggest that I've seen. But in the tropics, they can be huge, like 2 foot almost across. Really, really long arms. I had one named Creepy in my reef tank for years and years. And I named him that because when I would hand him a piece of fish or a piece of krill, he would grab it with his arm and shove it in his mouth, and you could see it poke through on the soft tissue of his back, like the outline of the food that he had eaten. And it was super creepy. So there you go. So yes, this is I believe a daisy brittle star. They're super cool. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for asking questions and all of that. We'll just set that animal right back down there. Also in this puddle are lots and lots and lots of shrimp. Oh, and a dead black-clawed mud crab male that is dead, so I can't show you the pieces that I wanted to show you. It could just be a molt. It disintegrated pretty quickly, so it might just be their outer shell. But as I roll this rock back, I'm going to be really careful not to smash the animals underneath. So I'm always extra careful when I lay them back. Look at all these flatworms up in here. Flatworm party. Can I hand you this so that I can set? This is a 2-hander rock putback. Too big to There we go. Some nudibranchs for you, Chris. Right? Here, I've got 2. So this blob here and this blob here are barnacle-eating nudibranchs. There's even a little baby jingle shell. Maybe that's an oyster. So that right there is one. They're right up, the head end is this end. This is the back end, which will have like a plume of gills. And they eat barnacles, so it makes sense that they would be on this rock covered with barnacles. And when you start seeing one, usually you'll start seeing that's a slipper shell, yeah. There's a slipper snail on that guy. And then green shore crabs. But here is a male black-clawed mud crab who's trying to pinch me. Okay, here we go. So different tactic. The female was just kind of curled up and said, "Don't mess with me." The male was much feistier, much crabbier crab. And you can see that tail flap, that abdominal flap right up the center there. It doesn't touch the legs. It doesn't have to hold any eggs or anything big. So they're pretty protected. Oh, and here's a great example of a hairy hermit crab. A hairy hermit who's found his girlfriend. Okay, so hermit crabs, this one right here, can barely fit inside this shell. And hairy hermits choose a shell that is too small on purpose so that they can be really fast and nimble. And this one's found a female and is going to carry her around. She's much smaller in a smaller shell. If he finds a bigger female, he'll carry her around too. And basically he's waiting for the female crab to molt, to shed her outer skin and be soft-shelled. And then that's when he is able to fertilize her eggs. Which is super cool. Oh my gosh, there's tiny little crabs here. A little shore crab. So small. There's so much life. Like, you just stare at one spot and you could spend an hour just looking at everything that's here.
I can't leave these nudibranchs behind yet.
No, they're super cool.
How does a very, very soft-bodied sea slug manage to eat a barnacle?
They have a radula, like all the sea slugs do. I'm going to place it underwater so that you can see their gill plume. Yeah, so they have rhinophores up on the top. Those are their like antenna, and then at the back is where they're gonna extend their gill plume, their gills. That's where the nudie of nudibranch comes from, is the naked gills. So they're unprotected. They have no hard shell like their snail cousins, and so they're the slug version instead of the snail.
Are they free swimming, or do they just crawl around?
They just crawl around. They typically don't. Well, this species typically doesn't move. And this is a very hardy species. I typically don't handle nudibranchs. The only ones I do handle are these Dorids. So the ones that have the typical gill plume on their butt are much hardier, and the aeolid nudibranchs, the ones that are really fluffy, frilly serrata, they are so soft. Like I don't really mess with them. So yeah, barnacles.
I was looking at the barnacle that it was on.
Yeah, right. Could be. Was it eating it? It's a slow process, so
Sure.
it's not fast. And this time of year, they generally are clumped together because in the spring is when they'll be mating. So I'm surprised actually that there's not egg ribbons on here. But I might find some more. And the eggs of the individual nudibranchs vary from species to species, so sometimes you can identify just the eggs. Generally, jellyfish in the Salish Sea are pretty safe to touch if they're clear. The more color they have, the more sting they have. So the yellow ones are a little uncomfortable. The red ones are painful, stingy. But because our jellyfish here come from such productive waters with tons of plankton and lots of food, they don't have to have strong stinging tentacles that like have to paralyze their food. They're able to just drift right into it. It doesn't take much. And if you compare that to the tropical species that are in crystal clear water with not a lot of food, if they happen upon a fish, they have to be able to paralyze it and kill it right away. So they have much stronger venom than our species do. Most people, it feels like bad nettles. Like it's an itchy, burny, but it generally doesn't send you to the hospital. People will tell you various remedies for how to get rid of that stingy cell. Hot water is the best. It will denature the proteins. Also salt water is pretty good as well, which luckily enough, jellyfish live in salt water, so usually that's pretty, you have access to that. All right, well, let's place this one. Yeah, here, I'm gonna move our slug to the side just because it's likely to get smooshed, and then you can flip it back and I'll tuck them right back under. The soft-bodied animals, I'm always so nervous for them when I manipulate the beach. Intertidal animals are some of the toughest creatures on the planet, but it doesn't mean that they are invincible. So when you do go out to the beach, you want to be as careful as you can. Walk slowly and carefully. Make sure you're placing your feet where you can see so that you're not going to step on like a sand dollar or a small crab or something squishy like an anemone. Go slow, because the beach is never a place to run. Oh my gosh, there's so many shrimp. The water just like boiled as I walked past. That's all little shrimp. And their eyes, they're nocturnal, so their eyes kind of reflect the light the same way a cat's or a dog does at night. Little short crabs hanging out. There are so many things to see here. But yeah, I would encourage you to come to a live program if you're in the area. We do these. Oh, this is a perfect rock to float right here. It's small. It's thin. So I'm gonna let you roll it back and see underneath it yet. All right. Well, it was a bit deeper of a rock than I thought. So rocks that are really deep in the sand are not good candidates for flipping. But here's a big red rock crab, or graceful. No, words are hard. This is a black-clawed mud crab. Their scientific name is just great. It's Lovopinopolis bellis, and it just has this very musical sound to it. Lovopinopolis bellis. And then green short crabs. Yeah, not as many things on here as I would have thought. It looked like more of a slab rock to me. Just moved. So these rocks are all kind of interesting because they are they've come down from the riprap of the road. So these are not the native stones that are here. They've migrated from people moving them to create a roadway here. And then they kind of break off of that section and move down the beach in the wake of the waves and things. Alright, I think my headlamp battery, I'm gonna have to pause for a second. I'm looking at something interesting. I'm gonna change that. Flatworms. Ooh, they're cruising. Lots of more shrimp. Another scale worm. Polychaete here. Here's another polychaete. This one is a banded tube worm. Spirochetoptera is their scientific name, which is kind of a fun one. Oh, here's another Japanese invasive that came in with the Japanese oysters. This is sargassum weed, and it has these little floats, pneumatocysts, that are filled with air, and so that keeps this propped up, and it helps it to outcompete other seaweeds because it basically can be on top and in the sunlight. Alright. Well, friends, I'm turning to a popsicle, and our tide is coming back up. It's actually gotten really close to us while we were talking and looking at some of those creatures. So we probably should wrap it up, and I think we're fairly close. Oh yeah, there's the car. So we're fairly close to where we started. So I am hoping to do some more TikTok live streams here coming up. Maybe tomorrow. The tide gets later and later each night. So tonight's low tide was like at 10. Tomorrow's is like almost to 11. And they just go later and later after that. But in about 2 weeks or so, we should have another low tide swing and some pretty decent, hopefully some decent weather, and we can be back and bring you these live streams. Thank you to everybody who liked and shared and commented. Especially thank you to those of you who donated to us. We are a nonprofit group, and we do rely on grants and donations to be able to bring you these cool educational opportunities. If you're local to the Greater Gig Harbor area, I would encourage you to. Oh yeah, it's pretty. Tomato soup color. I would encourage you to come on out to visit one of our programs. They're free, and they take place at our local beaches. And you can learn all kinds of stuff. Harbor Wild Watch's motto is learn, have fun. So we hope that you have learned something tonight and you had a little bit of fun with us. Y'all are awesome. Oh, and just like that, my low battery alert comes on my phone. So that is definitely time to wrap up. Because it means we've been live streaming for a while here now. So thank you, everybody. Yes, Purdy spit. You got it.
Crabs out.
Crabs out. And we're out. All right. Get your last little likes in. I always end it so fast. And my husband's like, you gotta wait for people to like say goodbye. So there you go. Say goodbye, friends.